All right, today we're starting the next note packet, and this is a little intro section. You see that there's only two exercises to this part. So let me get on exercise number 1 here. You see in exercise 1 we have two graphs of lines, and they're on the coordinate plane. One's labeled graph A, one's labeled graph B, and we simply ask which graph is steeper. Well, if you think of a hill, or you think of driving your car up a hill or up a driveway or even down a hill, then you have the idea of steepness, all right? And it's pretty obvious to see by looking at graph A and graph B that imagine your little car traveling up this line right here, and imagine your car traveling up this line. This graph over here is going to be steeper. All right, now the idea of steepness is going to be used many times throughout your next few years. You're going to use it in earth science, and we're going to call it gradient. You're going to use it in math, and sometimes we're going to call it slope. And you're going to use it in other areas as well. All right, so if I simply say which graph is steeper, well, graph A obviously is steeper. So we're going to put down graph A for which one is steeper here. Now, this is where we get into a little more math. All right, it says write directions that explain how to move from one point on the graph to another point on the graph for each line. All right, so let's do graph A. And what I mean by this is simply write in words, how would you go from one point to another point on the graph? So I want to pick a point that's right on the graph right here. Okay, that looks like that point crosses um, the coordinate plane at a specific spot. In fact, I'm going to take that little dot out of there. What I want you to see is, it's crossing that coordinate plane right at a specific point. That would be the point 0, comma 2, actually. I'm going to put that right over here. Okay, and I'll put a little arrow. That point right there, 0, comma 2. It goes right through that point. Okay, let's go find another one. Is there another one where it goes directly through the point on the graph? And it looks like to me that maybe this point, oh, right there. That point right there is a point that goes directly through a coordinate, all right? And that is the point 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. So that is the point -4, comma -2. All right? So I'm going to make that look a little better here. Let's take that out there and I'll write it right down here, -4, comma -2. All right? So what I mean by when I say right direction, explain how to move from one point to the other. Let's start at this point down here. And how would I get to this point right there? Well, if I simply count, and this is the way I want to do it. I want to go up and down first because I'm kind of setting you up for something later here when we talk about slope. All right, I want to go up and down first. So how many would I go up and how many would I go over? Well, just simply count. Okay, here we go. We're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to go over 1, 2, 3, 4. Huh, okay. So all I want you to do for this is simply write an English sentence. All right, I would go up up 4, then to the right 4. All right, well, that's pretty easy. All right, let's do the same thing for the other. I'm going to switch over to red here. So I just have a different color to work with here. So this is graph B. Okay, and in graph B, I want to pick some points that are directly where they cross a coordinate, right on a coordinate here. Okay, so I'm going to pick this point right here. That point, that is the point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, comma 1. And actually it's going to the left, so it's -5 and then going down, comma, -1. Okay, that's easy enough. And it looks like, again, where I cross the y-axis here, right here, that's a good point to use as well. I'm going to write that one down. That's the point 0, comma 1. All right? So let's do the same thing. What are directions that would explain how to move from one point to the other? Well, if I start here, again, I want to go up and down first, okay? So I want to start here, and I want to go up 1, 2. All right, that would put me right there. And I'm going to count how many places would I move to the right. I'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so that would be up 2, and then to the right 5. Did I count that right? 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sure. Okay. So we've written it in English terms. All right. Now let's turn this off and let's go to the next set of directions here. And turn that layer off and go to the next one. It says write each of the directions you created above as ratios. All right. And if you remember, there's 3 ways to write ratios, but we're going to write these ratios as fractions. All right. And up in graph A, it said to go up 4 and then to the right 4. Okay, so I'm going to just simply put that as, oops, I'm going to turn that on there. I'm going to simply put that as a ratio of up 4 to the right 4. Okay, that's easy enough. There is my slope. See, this is the slope of the line. And actually, we usually write that as 1. 4 divided by 4 is 1. All right, and if I do graph B, if I remember right, that was up 2. So I'm going to put 2 on the top, and to the right, 5. So I'm going to put 5 on the bottom. All right, it's easy as that. And if I can reduce it, I reduce it, but 2 over 5 will not reduce, so I'm all good. All right. So now it just simply says, well, compare these two slopes. Well, when you compare something, you're going to see that quite often over the next few years. You're going to compare something. All they're doing is saying, well, which one's bigger? All right. And if we were to think of a number line here, okay, here's my number line. Here's 0, and here's 1. There's one of them. Okay, 1's right there. 2/5. That's a fraction that would turn into a decimal that would be less than 1. All right, if I divide 2 by 5, I get 0.4. So that would be about right there if I think of my number line. Okay, so what I would write is 1 is greater than 2/5. There, I compared them. All right. So easy enough. I'm going to make that 5 a little better there. That's a terrible 5. All right, there's a 5. That's even better. Okay, so I compared the two slopes. So when you see the word compare, you're just simply trying to see which one is bigger, which one's smaller. Okay, and finally, I think we have another set of directions here. Are the slopes positive or negative? Well, very easy. I could go back to this layer, okay, and I could say, well, are those positive numbers or are they negative numbers? Well, both of those are positive, okay? And we're going to talk much more about slope in the future. And whenever a line goes up to the right, well, it always has a positive slope. Okay, so both of these are positive. Again, I can look at the numbers, you see they're positive, or I can look at just the shape of them. And if they go up to the right, then they are definitely positive. So I'm going to turn that one off, and I'm going to say this one is positive, and this one is also positive. Okay, so again, we're just starting this unit, so this is something pretty easy. I hope it's pretty easy for you. We're going to do the same thing in the next exercise. So hold on, let me switch everything over, and we'll take care of that. All right, so here is exercise 2, and you can see we have 2 more graphs. And if you notice right away, we're still talking about slope, and you notice that these do not go up to the right. They go down to the right. All right, so the other 2 that we looked at went up to the right. Those were positive. Well, these are going to have negative slope. All right, and we'll prove that by counting off some numbers here. So the first one that says, which graph is steeper? Well, again, imagine driving your little car on these lines, and obviously graph B over here would be a much steeper slope than traveling along graph A. So for the first question here, which graph is steeper? Well, that's going to be graph B. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. And again, we want to write directions to explain how to move from one point to the other. So I'm going to go up to graph A and pick out some points that I know are right on the line. It looks like this one right here. I'm going to pick that one. That point, let's see what that is. That is the point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 6 to the left, so that's a negative 6. And I went up to point 4 here, and up 4 units. So that's a point negative 6, 4. And let's see if we can find another one. I think this point right here, that point right there looks to be right on the coordinate axes there where it crosses the coordinate. So that's going to be the point 1, comma 3. Okay, so I'm going to use those points and I'm going to count. And again, I want to go up and down first. So if I start over here, I've got to go this time, instead of going up, I've got to go down first. All right, so I'm going to start out and I'm going to say in graph A, I go down. How many do I go down? Well, if I start here and I want to be level with this guy, I only need to go down 1. So I go down 1, and then I go to the right. Okay, how many do I have to go to the right here? I count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 to get all the way right to there. Okay, so I go to the right 7. All right, now boy, my penmanship is getting pretty bad here. Okay, so I'll try to do a better job here. Let's switch over to blue. Okay, and let's do graph B. All right, graph B. Let's pick out some points over here. Graph B, I'm going to take, let's see, what one looks good? I think this one looks like it crosses those that cusp right there, that spot where the two lines come together. And that's going to be the point. Let me count over here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's going to be over 7. All right, and it's down 2. So that's point 7 comma negative 2. And I think this one right up here, that one looks like it crosses right at a junction here. So that is over 3, up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, that is over 3 and up 7. All right, and I want to do the same thing. I want to determine, okay, now how do I go from one point to the other? So again, I go up and down first. I want you to get in the habit of doing that. I go up and down first. So I'm going to go down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I went down 9. Okay, and then I go which way? I go to the right again. So I went down 9, I was right here, and I went to the right 1, 2, 3, 4. To the right 4. Okay. Now we said before these are going to be negative slopes. So let's do the next part here. The first part is, and I'm gonna cheat here. I'm gonna write these down. 1 and down 1 over 7. I'm just making myself little notes here. And down 9 over to the right 4. Okay. All right, so I want to switch over, right? Because I got to change it on my screen here. I've got to erase these and put that next part up here. So graph A, it says write each directions as a ratio like we did before. So I always want to do, whoops, I got to turn that on. I want to think rise over run, okay? Or I want to think, how much did my y direction change? Remember, this is my y-axis up here, and this is my x-axis. So when I say, what did I change in my y direction? Say, how much did I go up or down, okay? And then when I think run, I'm saying, how much did I change in my x direction? Or how much did I go right or left? Okay? And those are the kind of terms that we're going to use over and over throughout the next few weeks here. So how much did I rise in the first one here? And actually, I should have put a negative right in here and a negative right in there because I ended up going down, didn't I? I went down for the first one. I went down 1, so I'm going to put that as a negative 1. I went down 1, and I went to the right 7. Okay, these top numbers were the numbers for graph A. I went to the right 7. So there's my slope as a number. We like to write numbers in math, right? So my slope for graph A is negative 1 over 7. All right? And for graph B, actually I could switch over to, let's go over to green here. Does that show up pretty good? Yeah, it shows up pretty good. Okay. What did I do in graph B? I started up here and I went down 9. So again, that's going to be a negative 9. And then I went to the right 4. So there's my slope. I can write it again over here. Negative 9 over 4 is my slope for graph B. All right? And then, of course, we want to compare them. Comparing is just, again, just which one is bigger. Which one's bigger, which one's smaller. All right? So again, let's think of a number line. I'm going to switch over to red here for that. And let's think of a number line because some people have trouble with negative numbers. All right? And the number line. So here's 0. And if I were to convert negative 1/7 into a decimal, if I take 1 and divide by 7, I am definitely going to get a number that is in between 0 and negative 1. If you have to, you take your calculator out and do it. Take negative 1, divide by 7, and you'll get a number that is definitely in between 0 and negative 1. It's actually going to be closer to 0. I'm going to guesstimate here. That's probably not a good word to use. I'm going to estimate. All right, I'm going to estimate it's going to be about there on the number line. All right. Now, if I were to divide negative 9 and 4, okay, if I were to divide negative 9 and 4, I'm actually going to need a little more space here. So I'm going to erase this arrow. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's the first time I used that. And I'm going to make this a little longer. Oh, that's a terrible line. And I'm going to add in some more numbers here. Because if I take negative 9 and divide by 4, it's actually going to come out to be greater. It's going to be bigger than, I shouldn't say bigger, it's going to be smaller than negative 2. It's going to be negative 2 point something. Okay? So it's definitely going to be in between negative 2 and negative 3. And actually comes out to be negative 2.5, but that's neither here nor there. So looking at the number line, it looks like the negative 9 over 4 would actually be a smaller slope. All right, because it's more left on the number line, but that's really not how we look at slope. We usually look at slope as if it is more steep, then it has a larger slope. Okay, so this kind of throws a lot of what we've talked about before with numbers being bigger or smaller. It kind of looks at it a different way. And by strictly the numbers, you would say, "Oh, wait, well this one has the larger slope because it's more on the right on the number line." But when you're talking about slopes, if you want a bigger slope, you go with the steeper line. So in these two, I would say that this one, graph B, definitely has the bigger slope. All right, so you have to be careful with dealing with negatives like that. All right, so and the last part is simply the same as before. Are the slopes positive or negative? And you can go by the numbers. You can go back to the previous numbers and say, oh, look, they were both negatives. Or you can just simply look at the graphs and say, look, they went down to the right, so they are both negative. All right, so graph A is negative, and graph B is also negative. All right, so when you come in tomorrow, that's what I'm going to be able to ask you or want to ask you to be able to do is pick some points, determine the slope using those points, then compare those slopes, say which one is bigger, which one is more steep, and then tell me which is positive and which is negative. Okay, so hopefully that was pretty straightforward. Thanks for watching, and have a good night.